Hello everyone, welcome to the Dev Method. My name is Ricky. Today we're going to be talking about some backgrounds and overlays in your SwiftUI views. So just as a recap, what we have before, we have here a pull request view. I want to show you the comp that we're following. This is the idea. I know we don't have the black frame in our comp, but essentially what we're looking at doing here is just enhancing this pull request status. So this little, you might want to think of it as like a badge or some sort of view that shows the status of this pull request that's open. And the couple of things that we haven't added that definitely need to be there is that image needs to be enhanced. So we have a way to get an image from our designers, and now we also have a slight border on the edge. So we're going to take a look at customizing that as well, and then apply the same thing to these little like branches up here toward the top. So that's the goal for today. And just to give you an idea of the code and how it's structured, the whole thing is the pull request view. And in the body, as I click on some of the things on the left-hand side, it outlines them in blue on the right. So that's showing you there this VStack, which has all these other little parts included. So that's our first part of it. Then we have our second part, and then the next part, and then just below we have here it says pull request status view. So on that pull request status view, I want to take a look at enhancing this. So I put it in its own file. If you do Command Control J, jumps to the definition of this view. And the nice thing about using SwiftUI with Xcode here is that we have on the left-hand side the code, and then we could have a visual preview on the right. And since this wasn't included in the project here, we made this view ourselves when we started it up. We can create our own preview. So if you click that Create Preview button, it shows up here at the bottom. Now it doesn't put your actual component here because you could have multiple views listed. So we have to put our component in ourselves. So this is what we're going to do. And now we click Resume. Yeah, there it is. Now, yeah, the thing is it puts it inside this big frame that we have. We don't necessarily want that, so just to make the preview a little bit easier, because this is not like a full screen, this is just a small view component that's going to be put into a fuller screen. So we could change our preview layout, and we just say a size that fits, or we can actually pick a particular size. So I'm just going to do a size that fits. We're going to see it shrink down dramatically, so I'm going to use these zoom buttons to zoom in pretty big here. Yeah, so the biggest we can get it is 400. But the idea is still the same. We want to enhance this. So I think the things that we want to enhance about this, definitely the corner radius I think is a little too large. So let's try like, well, usually we'd have an exact spec to follow, but let's just say it's 4. So that's a little bit better, but now we need the borders for it. So here's the thing. There's a couple of ways to go about this. One of them I want to show you here is called an overlay. And an overlay means it's going to go on top of the view. So there's background, which is in back of the view, which in this case our view focus is this H stack. So there has an overlay which can go over it, and then there's a background that can go behind it, and then in the middle is the actual content itself, the actual view. So with that, let's just do an overlay here. And what we're going to choose is actually a rounded rectangle. We're going to use this shape here. And the corner radius, we'll give it the same corner radius that we just had a second ago, so just be 4. So notice without anything else, it goes right on top of the view, but it traces the entire shape that we had with the corner radius. So that's the first thing. Now we actually want it to be a border. We don't want it to be filled, but that border is known as a stroke. So any one of these shapes actually has an option for a stroke. So the first stroke that we're going to do, let me show you the autocomplete here. There's a content stroke, and then there's like a stroke border. But we actually want this first one here, so I'll show you how this looks. Whoops. No, wait, we want a different one. stroke, the line width. There we go. Let's say 1.5. Okay, so see it's starting to show that little black there. But the other part that we want to, the first argument is actually going to be a color. So we're going to use color.green. So that first color or that first part is just a view. If I option click on it, you'll see here it's content, where content is some shape. Okay, so the color actually works. Now here's the thing. I don't know if you could tell, but it doesn't really play out very well, because we have that background that we have set here on line 29, and now we have this border, but the border is cut off in a couple different places. So let's think creatively outside the box how we could maybe fix this. The nice thing about the border is that it could be an overlay or it could be the background. So what if we just put this in the background instead? Let's take this out. Here we go. So there we go. So there's our stroke. Now the strange thing that I'm finding right now is that, we actually don't need, since the background colors are just completely gone, we actually don't need this corner radius. So let's just take that out for a second. Okay. Right. So notice even with the corner radius in there, the position of the stroke is changing. So I can't tell if that's a strange thing, just like pixel pushing with SwiftUI and how it does these background views, or even the overlays for that matter, but we're just going to leave it at that. And so now the next thing though is that we need a background, like the color, the fill color. So what if we just did another rounded rectangle, we do the same corner radius, but now instead of a stroke we do a fill, like so. And then it's not line width here. So fill, it's going to be the content. There we go. We'll do color.green, and then it had the opacity of 0.2. So that's what we use there. Now the problem here is that background takes just a single view, and right now we actually have two of them. So how could we layer these two together? It's kind of like a background for a background. I want to think of it like that. So here's another way we could do it. We could use a Z-stack. And once this is wrapped in a Z-stack, they actually stack on top of each other. So now we're getting closer, but that line width is way too large. So let's bump that to maybe just a 1. And then now this is what we get. So strangely enough, just changing it from 1.5 to 1, that stroke positioning is actually changing. I find that to be odd, but that's okay. That's what we want, because that's closer to the comp. Now it actually has to be a lot thinner. I don't know if you look at this comp. I know we're zooming in to some picture on a website, but I believe that there is somewhat of a border there. And if we want that to be there, I'm just going to go with a 0.5. So that works. The only thing though, if I was to maybe pump this up a little bit more, let's just say it's a 2. Yeah, 0.5. So it can't really zoom in too tight to here, but you'll see on the left-hand side, in that leading part, that stroke is actually in the frame, so to speak. And then at the top it's there, but then the right side is missing, and then the bottom is actually missing as well. So it took me a little while to figure this out, but I found a creative workaround for it. I know we've added padding already to the views, and then we put the background there so that the background fills with that padding. But now we actually kind of want another padding outside the background. So this is, I would call this more of a theatrical trick, something where it's maybe a little bit misleading, but notice if I put a padding there too, I start seeing the edges on the right side and the bottom side. But we don't necessarily want it just all sides. We only want it for the trailing side, which is the right side, and then the bottom. So what we do is we actually pass in an argument here, and we do an array of, or a set, I guess, of dot bottom and then dot trailing, like so. Now it's a little bit too much, so let's just maybe could do a 1 and maybe do 0.5. We got it exactly on. So the same line width here, put it in right there, and it lines up exactly how you want. And I think depending on your line border, so like if I did a 1.5 here, see that's still not going to line up. So this is not necessarily the best way to maybe go about this view right now with this current version of SwiftUI, but this is the best that I could get it for now to match the comps. And it, for all I know, it's only going to be used on this one screen in this one spot, so it's actually probably fine to hard code some of the values this way and not necessarily make it so that it can be a variable line width. And I think we'll find later on that that's probably okay. And there's probably other workarounds that we could figure out later on. But that's as far as I want to get there. So that is the background and the overlay and what I learned from doing that. Now the next thing though is that we want from our comp, if you look at that, this little symbol. So this little symbol we could actually draw in code. It actually gets a little complicated. Like we could actually draw the lines with SwiftUI and then draw a circle. And then if we just set the stroke, it'll actually just do this exact little point A to point B line on the left-hand side. But the harder part is the triangle here, drawing that in a path. So instead of learning a little bit about that, our designers actually can provide us with assets, and we can use them in our application. And these assets are usually really small, so it's not like it's a lot for it to go into the app. So I will just show you here what I found so far. GitHub actually has a design system website for some of their styles, and it's actually primer.style. So Primer is the name of their design system. And if you think of the design system as a way to define some of the primitive values that you have with your UI, so everything from color, typography, maybe even like shapes or animations. Typically it's the color, the typography, and then there's a couple of other things that you could put in there as the basics, but those are the two that you usually see when you're starting a design system from scratch. Now this one's fully realized. It's not necessarily geared for iOS or Android for the mobile, but we're going to reuse some of what's there now. So under the design label at the top, I go to icons, and then I'm actually going to check out the new icons because I like some of those a little bit better. Then there's a 16-point size, and then there's a 24-point size for some of these fonts. And I realize that these are temporary, so they might change. But this is what we have to go with right now. So if I do pull request, I actually find the two here. And I think, just judging by my look, that this guy here is just a little bit different than the other guy. Call them guys, but yeah, like the arrow's slightly different. So I'm gonna go with the 16 image for the pull request. Yeah, so the arrow's filled in there. Is that what we have on the comp? Yeah, I think the comp has the arrow filled in, and that's a pretty small icon. So I bet it is the smaller size here. And I bet if it's not filled in, you probably can't discern with your eyes whether it is or not. So with that, I have a couple options. I could copy an SVG, but the SVGs here don't necessarily work well with iOS out of the box because, again, this isn't geared for iOS specifically or mobile specifically. So I'm going to use a PDF. We can actually use that in our Xcode project. So I just click to download that there. Go back to my Xcode project and go to its assets. And all I need to do is take it from my downloads folder and drag it right in. Now the last thing I'm going to do, because I don't necessarily need anything else, is that I'm just going to do a single scale for this image. Just need it in that one spot. Don't want to worry about filling in the other image sizes there. So that means, let's resume that preview. These two images that I kind of like glued together to make that pull request icon, we don't necessarily need those. So I'll comment those out for now. And I'll put image in here. And then just define it within the string. We do pull request. I think it's a get dash pull request. Yeah, there it is. All right. So that's good. Now I'll set its foreground color to color.green. Oh, that doesn't fix it. Oh, So one more thing I have to do here, because it's already in black, I have two ways to render this. And I guess I could write it in code, but I think I'm always going to want to change the labeling of it. It's probably always going to be green anyways, but the designers gave me this black here. So on the right-hand side in the inspector, there's an option here to render as a template image. That way I can change the color as I want. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So I think that that is good enough for now. Now, if we want to see it previewed with the other part of the project, we can do that real quick. So here I'm looking at it, and it actually looks pretty good. Maybe the board is a little bit too defined, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and update that just a slight little bit. How could we do that? Maybe we'll do an opacity on the stroke as well. We'll just like 99 or 90, 0.9. Okay, let's zoom out. Yeah, okay. So that seems a little bit better. So let's repeat the process real quick as a review with what's up above here. So the source branch, right? So you have this H stack with the text and the text, okay, and it's got a branch label here. So this was an extension on Vue, and it came from this branch label modifier. So that's a pretty common pattern. If you haven't seen it in the past videos, I have here an extension on text, or actually on Vue. It's really just any Vue right now, to give it some sort of like branch label styling. Might not be the best name in the world to add it like so, but this is my Vue modifier, which passes in the content itself. And right now, the content just passes back some sort of view. So what we want, so that corner radius, we're going to change that to 4, right? But then the other part to this is that we're going to have a background, and we're going to use this as our color. So here we go, Z stack. We'll do rounded rectangle. Oh, with the corner radius, 4. And the first one is a fill. And its content shape is going to be that background color. We want the rounded rectangle, same corner radius as before. But now we want stroke with the content and line width. So the content will be same thing, same color, that is. So this color here. And let's see. Opacity 0.4 or 0.2 is what we did. Okay, 0.2. Okay. And then here we did opacity 0.9 and the line width 0.5. And zoom out again. And if you hear that thunder, it's about the thunderstorm here. So it's getting close, I think. Yeah, it's getting close. So branch label, let's go back to that. There's the Vue modifier, the color, got the padding now. All right, so after playing around with it a little bit, I forgot that some of this is not necessarily the same as just the plain old colors, because I built my custom colors there. So we actually have a primary color that I'm going to add to make it like this darker blue around the edges. Now I noticed going back and forth doesn't really refresh the preview because the code is changed in a different file. So what I've been doing so far is just closing the canvas, reopening it back up, clicking resume. So there's a little tip for you if you can't get that to work exactly correctly. So yeah, actually it turned out pretty well here. And I think I'm just going to keep it at that. I don't see that there's a need for any of the padding maneuvering that we had to do on the other. And I wonder if that's because this is just wrapped around text simply rather than just the whole H stack or V stack layout component. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll be attentive and try and answer your questions to the best of my ability. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.